Very good. And we also have that in our weekly events email.
There will be a Ben Franklin presentation by yours, but I won't tell you. You know who he is, everybody. And George Washington. So it'll be great. Thank you.
Very good. Awesome. All right, we're going to have Jacqueline come on up, and she's going to just go over the city charter propositions.
So I've received a lot of information from many of you that are in this room, so I can't take any credit for this. Basically, the first warning sign is whenever the government tells you, oh, these are just cleanup changes, your antenna should go up. Dig deeper, okay? So City Council basically appointed a group of citizens to the Charter Review Commission. And I know Roman and Barbara could tell me more detail on like how often that is and all that, but it's not really important. It's a group of citizens appointed by council, which we know that these are probably a little more left-leaning citizens because it was current council that appointed them. And those citizens proposed changes to the charter, and that's what we're about to vote on. And I know there are a lot of varying opinions in the room on each of those propositions, and that's fine. Right now, I'm just going to go through the propositions as they will appear on the ballot and provide a summary of what they do, and then y'all can make your own decisions. There are 4 of them that I believe are blatant infringements on the voice of the people, and so I will point those out as we go along. Proposition A, it does have some innocuous grammatical changes, but it also has a provision that would allow the city council to de-annex any portion of the city without a vote of the citizens. It would also remove the petition process for requesting de-annexation. When it comes to new annexation being added to the city limits, state law, SB 6, requires a vote of the people to be annexed into the city limits. So thankfully, we have some good policy at the state level that's protecting we the citizens on that when it comes to being added to the city limits. So Proposition A is taking away the voice of the people when it comes to being removed from the city limits. One last provision in Proposition A, it's really not germane, doesn't really relate, but it's under there. It would restrict the city council's ability to punish its own members for disorderly conduct. Basically, a city council member, if they do something that's, I guess, unlawful or inappropriate, the only way that city council could punish their own member is if they did that conduct at a city council meeting or a city event, from what I understand. And so anything that occurs outside of city council or a city event, there would be no authority to rein them in on that. Proposition B, that's the next one. This would conform city charter to state law, requiring the consent of the people to be annexed into the city limits. And this relates to what I was just talking about. It's basically bringing the city charter into compliance with SB 6, which is state law. Proposition B also strikes language related to public utilities and condemnation because it's redundant in state law. It would also strike language that requires city records to be available to the public. So this is a concerning part of Proposition B. It says, currently it says, all records of the city shall be open to inspection by any person during the regular posted office hours of the city hall and in accordance with the Texas Public Information Act. That's also what state law says. They're repealing it, so we still have state law to protect us on that, but I'm kind of scratching my head as to why they're repealing it in the city charter, because that is an important thing for transparency before the citizens. Proposition C, any claim against the city or city staff would have to be made within 90 days of an injury or property damage caused by the city or city staff. State law requires that a claim for injury be made within 180 days. So this is changing it to within 90 days, about half of what state law says. So that's Proposition C. Proposition D would extend term limits from 2 to 3 years for city council members. So currently they're on a 2-year rotation for mayor and city council, and this would move it to 3-year terms. I'm not great with math, so this is going to make it harder for me to figure out when they're up for re-election and stuff like that. I like nice, even numbers, so I don't like it for that reason, but also it's making it harder for we, the people, to have a voice in city government because they're up for re-election less often. Proposition D would also allow the city council to leave council seats vacant if someone resigns with less than a year left in their term. It would keep the requirement that a special election occur if the vacancy takes place with more than a year left in their term. Proposition D would also retain the ability for council to appoint a temporary council member. So the big changes in D are extending the term limits and allowing them to keep a seat vacant if someone resigns with less than a year left in their term. So that could be an issue if you run into tie votes and that kind of stuff. Proposition E, as in Edward, this clarifies circumstances of when and how a city council seat could become vacant. I'm not an expert on these things. I don't see any other issue with that one. It seems like it is just kind of a clarification proposition. That's proposition E, as in Edward. Yes.
There is language in there that they are striking that says no council member can serve more than 3 consecutive terms. If they're striking that, to me that says.
Okay, so it's removing term limits then.
No term limits.
Okay, is that, okay. So we got disagreement in the room on what that does. But okay, so proposition F, as in Frank, would increase pay for mayor and city council. Currently, mayor and city council are paid $25 a meeting, and this proposition would move it to $250 a month. So it's basically from a per meeting basis to a monthly basis. $250 a month for city council members and $500 a month for the mayor. And in terms of whether you vote yes or not on this one, it's up to you as to whether city council deserves a raise or not. In my opinion, no. So I will be voting no. And the other thing about, yeah, well, we could write into an exception for Roman. I don't think that would go over too well. So the other thing about Proposition F is that whether they attend meetings or not, they're going to get paid with this per monthly basis. Currently, they only get paid if they show up to meetings. So that's another important thing about that one. Proposition G is grammatical changes throughout the city charter to say his or her instead of just his. So it's still acknowledging that there's only 2 genders, thankfully, and it's putting her in there as well as his. So like his, her for a city council member or mayor. Proposition H, as in Hull, it would require, so H and I both are kind of moving in this trend that we're seeing across the state where it's empowering unelected bureaucrats. And so I believe strongly that H and I, we need to say no, absolutely no to these. Proposition H would require 4/5 of the members of city council to hire or fire the city manager. Currently, it's a simple majority vote. So obviously this empowers the bureaucracy who are unelected. Also of note, currently there are 2 assistant city managers there's 3 city managers total. And there's some of the highest paid positions in the city. And in the state, yes, school superintendents and city managers are paid a ridiculous amount of money. Y'all should look into that. 6 figures. All right, so Proposition I would require 4/5 of the members of city council to hire or fire the city attorney. So this is similar. So the H relates to city manager, I relates to city attorney. And again, currently it's a simple majority vote to hire or fire the city attorney. That's another very powerful position in the city. And Liberty in Action has been learning a lot lately about how powerful that position is. Proposition J would change the deadline for the city manager to propose the annual city budget. Currently, it's the second Monday of August is the deadline for the city manager to propose the budget. This proposition would move it to July 31st, so basically 2 weeks earlier. This shortens the amount of time that City Council and citizens have to review the annual budget. It's basically giving us less time to look through it, and that's probably one of the most important things that City Council votes on is the budget. It literally touches every part of what the city does, kind of like in Congress where they have the power of the purse, and we have to pay attention to the budget very closely. So I encourage y'all, that's all of them. There's 10 propositions total, so A through J, and I encourage y'all to do your own homework on these. Again, I probably got some stuff wrong. There's differing opinions on this. There's full details on the text that they change on the City Council website, so I encourage you to go look at that yourself. Read the sections of the charter that they change. They have the changes in red versus the black of the current charter, so you can tell what they're doing. And of course, you see the recommendations up there on the screen from Liberty in Action. Take it with a grain of salt, vote your conscience. So, appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Jacqueline, for doing that. Yes, please dig into those. We, as a recommendation committee, were at a loss on some of them on which way to best go. And so the tendency was to say just no on everything, but we thought, we'll give them that one, but maybe two, whatever. Anyway, I'm going to have Terry come up. She's going to share some things that are in the works, and then she's going to introduce Luke. And so I will not be up here anymore.
All right, y'all. Okay.
Are we supposed to clap now?
Yes.
All right, if they're attacking us this hard. Because we're going to win big, and that's okay. And you're going to hear from some of these candidates tonight, and they're about to get on the hot seat a little bit, because Luke Macias of the Luke Macias Show, also in a great partner with Texas Scorecard. Y'all know him from our last candidate forum. He's fabulous, and he knows more about Texas politics than really anyone in the room. And he has a keen awareness of not just state house politics, but I'll tell you what, he's involved in a whole lot of stuff like we're doing here in Kerrville, and really, really helping direct and help us sense and know what to do and what's worked in other areas of the state, and helping consult and give people, and for us, it's free consulting, because I know he actually can make a lot of money off consulting. But he's a good friend to Liberty in Action and to conservatives everywhere, so please welcome Luke Macias.
Okay, I'm going to have our candidates come up here in just a second. I will start with a little factoid for you. If every Republican primary voter, everybody who voted in the Republican primary in the city of Austin, voted in their municipal elections, they would have a Republican mayor in the city of Austin, okay? Now, that is because so few people vote in city elections, right? So Republican primaries will will range between, let's say, 10 and I think the biggest county I saw was like 42%. So it's between 10 and 42% of registered voters will vote in a primary election, okay? And the average city turnout is between 4 and 7 around, right? Maybe you get to 10 in a really high election year. So because of that, if the Republican voters in Austin showed up, you'd have a Republican mayor, which probably means that most of the people you know are not going to vote in this election. That's what you have to remember. We're going to have a conversation tonight. We're going to go through some questions. Everybody up here is going to talk about different issues they care about, and we're going to learn about it. But the reality is that most of the people you know, I think I said this in the last forum too, but it's more true. I wasn't lying to you last time, but it's more true tonight, okay? So in the primary, when I tell you most people you know aren't going to vote, it is true because most of them aren't. It's even a bigger most. So 9 out of 10 people you know, people at your church, people, your family members, your cousin who's in Kerrville, whatever. You know, it's really funny, by the way. I was in between assistants when I got scheduled for this. This is the last thing I'll tell y'all. I was in between assistants when I got scheduled for this, so it wasn't on my calendar. And when I tell you what on my calendar, my cousin who lives in Kerrville texted me this morning. He said, "Dude, you're coming to Kerrville tonight." And I said, "No, I'm not." That was my reply. I said, "No, you're not." "No, I'm not." And he said, "No, they think you are." Because he sent me a picture. I guess he's on an email list or something. I said, well, looks like I am coming to Kerrville tonight. So my church men's gathering tonight, I'm not attending. I'm with y'all. And, but there you go. So, with that, we're gonna have a discussion with candidates, and as y'all are thinking and listening, I'm hopeful I'm gonna try to go through this quicker, so that y'all can maybe ask a couple questions. We can get some information, and then the question is, what are y'all gonna do with that? Because from now till election day, you're gonna have an opportunity to tell your friends, hey, early voting is going on, here are the places to go vote, here's the list, right? And y'all learn this in the primary, but you text this to people you know, and they're like, perfect. I have no idea what I'm gonna do. And if you empower them with the information, now they don't feel dumb. Because if you just tell your friend, go vote, they're gonna go, I don't know what I'm even doing. But if you text them a picture of this and say, please go vote, here's the locations, they're gonna go, now I feel empowered to do the right thing because I wanna make the right decision. Last thing I'm gonna say is, y'all are such cheapskates by not supporting like $3,000 a year for your city councilman. I just think that's pretty, I don't know. You're hoping to elect these good people. That's the only one I was going like, golly, it's $250 a month. It's not like these people are, I mean, inflation. What are these people buying? There's like 3 trips to HEB, maybe, for like 4 meals. I mean, but okay. So that's y'all's decision. You want these people starving. And with that being said, let's meet some of the people that y'all want to not be able to feed their families. Roman Garcia, Barbara Ferguson, and Brent Bates, will y'all please join us up here? And how we're going to do this is I'm going to ask a question, and then we're going to start on one side. So if we start with Roman, it's going to go down. Roman, Barbara, Brent. And then, Brent, you're going to keep the microphone, and then I'm going to ask you the next question, and you're going to go right back down. Okay? So we should be able to go. We are going to try to stick to 1-minute answers, okay? Because that's about 3 minutes per question, and I got quite a few questions. We'll be able to cover a lot of ground. I think we'll be able to address some of the questions. So first, let's just talk about kind of introing. What prompted you to run for the position you're running for today?
All right, everyone. I'll turn this on. Okay. I don't know if I'm able to stand. Let me stand right here for a bit, and then I'll go back and sit up. Thank you, everybody, for being here this evening. Liberty in Action, thank you for hosting this. The fact that you all are here is exactly the reason why I'm running, for all of you. I have been honored and blessed to serve as your city council member, going on my 3rd year now, re-elected last year, and we took a risk here. But I think we have an opportunity to change our city around. Right now, you have your city council members who we have all of these issues in our city. We have streets in disrepair, we have government overreach, as we just talked about in our elections, and your house and regulations. We have inflation, we have water issues, we have a drought, we have a lack of affordable and attainable housing, and instead of focusing on all the issues that our city council knows that are important to the people, they're focusing on all these extra things. What's quality of life? How are we gonna bring our visitors and tourists to our community? They're using our taxpayer dollars to focus on all these other things, all these wants, instead of the needs. We have got to change that mindset. Taking the risk to go from a city council member to a mayor means that we have a little bit more influence and a leadership position to work with the rest of my colleagues, and I look forward to serving with Barbara and hopefully Brent as well. Thank you.
Barbara, what prompted you to run?
Well, what prompted me to run this time was because I lost last time by 3 votes. But last time I ran, the straw that broke the camel's back for me was our library. When we had a city council who refused to act to remove obscene materials from our children's department, when my opponent now went so far as to slam a Bible down on the dais and compare it to obscene materials, I said, that's it. We do not have a city council who is representing the values of Kerrville. That's right. They're not representing you. So in addition to that, I'm real interested in water. That was my background. My late husband and I were residential home site developers. I ran a water and wastewater system that served all of our homes, and I saw problems in Kerrville. The data that we were getting out of the city regarding water conflicted with what Headwaters Groundwaters was telling us, and I see problems on the horizon. We have to change direction when it comes to water and growth.
Thank you.
Same question.
Go ahead.
Yes, I ran for mayor 2 years ago and lost. And we have an interesting phenomenon here in Kerrville. Every mayoral race, you go from 65 to 85 normal votes that are not election day or pre-election. There's something else, but every mayor race, they're 1,200, 800, or 600. So we've got this seesaw up and down. I filed a FOIA request to look at all the election from 2022, which I get to go pick up tomorrow. So we're going to have some interesting look at that. I was actually planning on leaving Kerrville until my 2 daughters came back to Kerrville. So now, and I'm a grandfather, a 6-month-old little girl, and some of y'all have seen her picture, I'm sure, because she's all over Facebook. And so basically, I'm running for them. I welcome you all to the world of suing the city of Kerrville. I've been in suit with them for 4 years. It's interesting, when they were violating my civil rights, nobody was really concerned. But now they're violating yours. And they're going to continue to violate everyone else's. And so, yes, these people do not share our values whatsoever. And the present administration is more than willing to continue to violate our civil rights until we have none. And so if I get elected, and by the way, Roman had already declared for mayor, and Barbara had declared, and Kent didn't have any competition. And so I thought $100 and I'll give him some competition. The last thing we need is another banker. We got enough bankers, nail salons,
Brent.
chicken places, and convenience stores.
Thank you, Brent. I'm gonna let you answer the next question. What is the core functions and duties of city government?
Oh, praise God. Okay. I believe in the marketplace. They need to get out of housing. They need to get out of everything. They're not any good at a much. The core functions of the government is to do those things that only the government can do by function. The marketplace will solve everything else. If we have good roads, if we have good utilities. By the way, folks, there's not water in your fire hydrant, and I can tell you all about it, all right? If we have good utilities, good roads, good water, good sewer, good security, police, fire, protection. Literally, that's what the city needs to worry about. God made this a beautiful place. I've lived here 33 years. We got some of the most fantastic people in the world that live here in Kerrville. But what we don't have, and we haven't had for several decades now, is a city council where they actually decided the policy and got the staff to implement the policy from the city council. We've got a bunch of rubber stamp nice people. If I had a dinner party, I'd invite Joe. He's an interesting dude. He knows a lot about history and several of the others. But we've got to get policy coming from the top down.
Thank you, Brent. Barbara, core functions of city government, 1 minute.
Well, I agree with everything Brent said. The role of a city council is to speak with you folks, take your wants and wishes, and represent you to the staff in the bureaucracy of our government. And I don't use the term bureaucracy in a negative way. That's just a fact. That's just what they are. And they should not be setting policy. And currently, our city council is allowing our city staff to set policy, and then they rubber stamp it. And that's why they've been so upset with Roman, because he hasn't learned how to use a rubber stamp. Also one of the reasons why they're so upset with me. I get up and I speak my mind, and they don't like that. It upsets the apple cart. And unfortunately, our current city council thinks that any disagreement is conflict that is bad. And we need to share information, and we don't need to be afraid of new ideas. And we need to focus on what you want and need.
I concur with what's already been said. The core function of government is to represent the citizens and to provide the essential needs that our community so deserves. And so that comes from everything in infrastructure, our roads, our water, our sewer, and our utilities. As mayor, I'm in a unique position because the mayor serves as a voting member on KPUB, where all of our utilities come from. So, as a de facto member of that, I will also make sure that I sit on that and we continue to provide high quality services and utilities to all of the community at a low and effective rate. What's so unfortunate right now, though, is that you see individual council members and you see the rest of my colleagues and they just all raise their hand to everything. Any recommendation that comes up, we have got to get away from that mindset. If all you need is every single one, all 5 of them, to agree on everything, you really only need one person running the city. You have 5 individuals elected because it's supposed to represent the entire community, and that's what we'll bring back to City Council.
I'm gonna ask you next, because you mentioned serving in your role over the utility as well. So how would you approach water availability for the city?
Sure. So right now, I don't even know if the city has a plan for water. Right now, we are in an extreme drought, and it's not just unique to Kerrville, it's the entire Hill Country. What we need to do better, just overall, is plan. The city is not planning for the growth that is coming here. They are throwing all of these developments and giving them all of the incentives that they want. To solve that, we have got to get together with our regulatory agencies, with TECQ, with Headwaters Groundwater Conservation, and really get together to put a plan for our community and look at what's going to be sustainable in the long term. Do we have the additional wells to drill? Do we have the resource? Kerrville has got to be a good steward of our entire water system, because what we take isn't just affecting Kerrville. We affect all surrounding areas. We in fact affect the entire county. So for those of you who live outside the county and do not live within the city limits, you got to understand we have got to come together and play a role. Right now, you don't see these agencies working together. They're working against each other. That's why the city has legal issues with Headwaters. We just got to come together as a community and solve these issues.
Barbara, you mentioned that you have a little bit of a water background, so why don't you give us 1 minute on what you would do for water availability?
Well, the first and easiest step to take is to address conservation, because that doesn't immediately take dollars. And that's something that the city was failing to do last summer. If you all remember, the county had been on stage 3 water restrictions for over a year while the city was on stage 1. Finally, when August rolled around and the city had just gone into stage 2, but not because they said there was a water problem. They said it was because, well, one of their wells needs some repair, so we're gonna go into stage 2. Headwaters stepped in and said, no, this isn't gonna work anymore. Said, you're going into the stages that we're in because we're not seeing you be responsible with our aquifers. And that was the problem. The river flow went to nothing. We started pumping out of the aquifers that were at historically low levels, and Headwaters said, this cannot continue. So then started the legal problems. But if we would go into earlier conservation stages and restrict our irrigation, and your lawn can survive on being watered twice a week. You don't have to water 3 or 4 times a week. It can survive. And we need to do that first as a first step and admit that we've got the problem. We can't fix what we won't admit.
Thank you, Barbara. Brent?
To kind of tag on to what Barbara said, you can't fix what you don't know. And part of the problem is, and I've been here 33 years, and how many of y'all know Jay Clanton? Nobody knows Jay Clanton. Yeah, there we go. You know, Jay used to be the Public Works Director. And Jay has told me many times, you'd be amazed what's in the ground in Kerrville. You'll have an 8-inch line that goes to a 4-inch line that crosses over here to a 2-inch line and then down to a 1-inch line and back to a 4-inch line. And you wonder why you don't have water. And so what they do not do is they do not do a proper assessment of what they really have. In fact, when you go to develop a piece of property, they charge you $150 for what they call a fire test. But it's not really a test. It's a calculation that Freeze and Nichols does to tell you what they think the water is. The test that I finally broke the hydrant on was 42% lower. The actual water was 42% lower than the test. We've had people up on Vicksburg Village watch their house burn down because the fire department had to go down the hill, get water in the belly of the truck, and come back up, and guess what? She had a fire hydrant in her front yard. So we've got to do a real assessment before we can do all things. I totally agree with everything else they said, by the way.
Thank you, Brad. Brent, our tax revenue has increased 39% in the last 4 years. Is this a problem? Do you think this is something we should sustain, or what kind of changes would you make? And you have 1 minute.
Okay.
That's a tough question in 1 minute, so.
I'm going to talk fast.
That's good.
No,
Yeah, there you
it's
go.
not sustainable if we want to have a sustainable town. My website's actually Kerrville for Sustainability, which is kind of odd. But, all right, so, thank you. And you know better than to do that to me. Anyway, so, yes, we ran 2 years ago trying to lower tax rates by 40%. Had a big 4 by 8 foot sign out there. How many of y'all remember that sign? All right. Well, you wonder why they did that big fan out that you can't do anything. Well, I'm sure a lot of it has to do with that sign. The reality is this: the people out there are struggling. Maybe not those of us in here, but I have news for you. A lot of the people that work construction, that work some of our service-related jobs, they're barely making it. And we cannot pay for the pipe dreams of city staff. You know, why we spent $750,000 for the Eclipse party is beyond me, because mathematically, the only thing that I could figure out we could ever get back from it was about $250,000. But I had to do the math because the staff would not give me that in relation.
Thank you, Brent. Barbara, 1 minute. What kind of path do you think we're on, or where do you think we need to go? With our property,
Regarding
with our
taxes.
taxes, 39% increase.
The taxes, part of the 39% increase, of course, was due to the $45 million bond that was passed by the voters. Okay, so in that, voters have their responsibility, but also the city did not make it clear to the voters what this $45 million bond was going to mean. I've served on the Public Safety Service or Facility Committee. I was the only person on that committee who would not sign off on asking you for $45 million because it was too high. We needed the new facilities. Do not doubt that a bit. But this was a gold-plated project. I saw the information they gave us, which was limited to one source. They asked a committee to make a decision to ask you for $45 million based on one source of information. Now that kind of committees working in our city are repeated over and over and over again, and that has to stop. We need to be more transparent with the people. We've got to give you better information so you can make decisions that will keep your taxes low.
Thank you, Barbara.
Part of the problem to our entire tax revenue increase is the fact that city council is not really telling you the truth every time they adopt the tax rate. They're not telling you the full truth. They'll lower the tax rate, but it doesn't get to the point where we stay at zero in terms of the new revenue we're getting. They still get additional revenue even when they lower the tax rate because your appraisal value goes up. And part of the issue is every single time they do that, our expenses have gone up. Our population throughout decades has increased very minimally, less than 1%. And yet our expenses continue to increase. Most of that is due to the debt that we're incurring. $45 million for that project. City Council recently approved $20 million for quality of life projects that, by the way, my opponent Joe Herring sits on the board and on City Council for where millions of dollars he approved to go to a certain project. This is the out of control spending that we have just gotten in the habit of doing. We have got to get every single family and every single individual knows that throughout inflation and throughout these last few years, you've got to tighten your pockets, you've got to tighten the wallet. Government doesn't think they do because it's our money. We have got to change that mindset on City Council and say, we're going to take a step back, let's slow down the growth, that'll slow down our expenses, And hopefully we don't probably see the expansion of all these expenses. We have so many top-notch administrative employees within the city that we most likely do not need. So we've just got to slow our roll down and really get this situation under control. Otherwise, we're going down a path that's unsustainable for our community in the long term.
Thank you, Rob. There's been some controversy over your library. What are your thoughts on that issue as a whole, and what do you want to do moving forward?
So I'm pretty sure most of you know the controversy with the library was the obscene, pornographic material, vulgar material that was in the children's section. On tables this high for children to get off of the table. Your city council, and I'll speak to this because I don't know Barbara will, I'll speak for her. One of my colleagues, Brenda Hughes, took the Bible in comparison to the books that were in the children's section and slammed it down, saying there's bestiality, there's pornography, there's all these bad things in the Bible. If your city council does not know the difference between the things the Bible condemns and what these books are teaching children, innocent children, to do, oral sex acts and everything. I've had to read them because I got to understand what the policies that we're making. So we came in conjunction with a group of citizens to try to get the city council to take action. And we're not asking to move the books, or we're not asking to ban the books, we're asking to move the books to the adult section and to protect parental rights. If an adult wants their child to see that, then fine. We're not going to get in the business. Government should not be that far in the business of your raising your kids and your family. But we ought to be keeping our children, those that are most innocent, safe in our community.
Thank you. Barbara, any questions?
Roman talked on really all the points that I would want to say about the library, but I'd like to just deviate just a little bit, saying that what we saw happen with the library is really a symptom of what's happening all over the United States. The American Library Association has an agenda. They feel it is their job to start social change. They want to change America. It's a socialist organization. The president is Marxist and just openly says so. Their policies, the American Library policies, are our policies. And that's where our city council is allowing outside groups to come in, set up their policies, and say how Kerrville should function. And that's a real problem. I think we need to move away from that. We are Kerrville. We are Texans. We can make these decisions ourselves.
I had the pleasure of moderating a library seminar type deal. We had a bunch of people come in and talk, and what I found out real quick was ask them, how many of y'all been here 30 years? Like 5 hands. How many 20 years? Another 5 hands. How many 10 years? Well, we get about 20 people there. Most of the people only been here 5 to 10 years. And so they have brought their mindset here. They're very active, they're very organized, and they vote. And so the reality is we got to get organized and we got to get out there and vote to win, all right? The other problem with the library is I told them I've never been to it. My kids have never been to it. My granddaughter's 6 months old. I know she hadn't been there because I hadn't taken her. And we need to use, in my opinion, the library and the changing of the functionality of the library and try and bring it into the 21st century as a way of getting not only control of the library, but getting it away from the Library Association. Because I have news for you. It's not really doing that much for the community, in my personal opinion. And I had some lady just blast me up one side, down the other, and of course you all can tell from all the press I get, that doesn't really bother me because I don't read any of that anyway. But she was, oh, you don't even go. I said, no ma'am, I don't. That's why I'm the perfect moderator for this. I don't have a dog in this fight. She came up toward the end of it and thanked me for doing it and says, you know, you all brought up some really good points. And so we have got to get control of the library and not allow this to continue. By the way, City of Belton has one city employee for about 130 citizens. Kerrville has one for every 67.
Brent, are you in favor of the dark skies ordinance that was passed in January of 2023?
No. No, I'm not.
Well, let's do 30-second responses, because this one seems like an easy one. So there you go.
This
30
is
seconds.
this is an easy one. They got no business controlling that. It's none of their business. And you know, my dad was a pastor, and he used to late life pastor. He was a business executive, became a pastor. And his comment was, "How much biblical truth are you going to lay on the altar of unity?" We have to decide how much of our freedom are we going to lay on the altar of unity with these people that are here in our town.
Time.
No, I'm not. And this is another example of governmental overreach. We're just beginning to see it over the last few years here in Kerrville, but this is happening all across the nation. There are these organizations, the Hill Country Alliance, they come in, they do some nice things, but I did a lot of digging into exactly who funds the Hill Country Alliance, and they were behind this Dark Skies ordinance. There's the International Dark Skies thing too, but anyway, they're all tied together. And when you look at their funding, I just kept going one organization to another organization to another one, and you know where I ended up?
George Soros.
George Soros.
Time.
We need to be careful, pay attention.
There you go. Drop that bomb right at the end. 30 seconds. Go ahead, Roman.
Okay, so a quick summary for those of you, because I know there are probably some of you that don't know what this does. The city went so far as to say we want to regulate lighting outside your house to protect our dark skies so we can see the stars that we all love. But then they went a step further and said that we're going to regulate lights inside your house if it shines outside. So this is an easy answer. That was an overreach of government authority and power, and I'm against it.
Let's talk about development. What is going to be your approach to, you got a lot of growth, this area is growing, that's not going to stop. What is going to be your approach to new development as mayor?
So as our community continues to grow, we've got to take our development and that growth in a responsible direction. This is very simple for me. A lot of the reasons why we're growing so quickly is because the city council is giving away so much for it to happen. The recent development of the Lennar Homes of an additional about 500 houses right next to the middle school. Before I go that, they gave away about $30 million to Lennar to do that. A multi-billion-dollar company to build these houses, to try to make them affordable. They're gonna be about $300,000 to $350,000 homes when they're built. That's not affordable or attainable for our community. There was no plan for additional infrastructure, for additional thoroughfares and roads, no plans to expand the loop. It's right next to the middle school, and if you go down there when people are picking up their kids or dropping them off, we have a whole line down Olympic Drive. That's just one example. This continues to happen throughout the entire city.
I'm going to give you all each 2 minutes, because I
Okay.
think this is a little bit more of a complex issue, so I'll give you all each 2 minutes.
Okay, sounds great.
Continue.
Okay. What we're seeing right now is all these incentives. The bottom line for this is we see all these incentives. In order to control it though, like I said at the beginning, we've got a plan. We've got a plan. If this growth is going to come, do we have the water resources for it? I can tell you right now, if you go on the west side of Kerrville towards Ingram, no development can happen over there. If a developer comes to the city, they will tell them, we don't have the capacity. And why? Because we have water mains that are deteriorating, and we have maintenance that we haven't kept up with. And every single time we have to do this maintenance, since we haven't budgeted for it, guess where that comes from? Debt. That comes from the taxpayers. Every single time.
Time.
That's like getting debt to pay for your groceries. Absolutely not.
Thank you. Barbara, 2 minutes, your general approach to development moving forward for the city of Kerrville.
Well, all I can say is, and I'm fully retired from land development, not doing anything here. I have no business interests in Kerrville. I will not be swayed in any direction on the council. But I was a land developer in the past, and I would have loved to have done business in Kerrville. There has been, as Roman said, way too many giveaways. We live in one of the most desirable areas of Texas. Why do we think we have to beg people to come here? They're going to come anyway. So what we need to specialize in is what we've done best in Kerrville, and that is maintain our friendly atmosphere, our beautiful river, and take care of our own citizens. And I reject the idea that growth is inevitable. There are certain areas of our country that have had to dial back growth because they have the same kind of challenges that we have here for resources. If you do not have the water, if you cannot find the water, you're going to have to dial back. That's just a fact. Now, finances can change that. If you want to tax everybody just way over the top to be able to bring water in here and pipe it from who knows where, then yeah, you can keep growing. But are you willing to bear that tax burden for this growth? No. I don't think so. So I think we need to have a different mindset about growth. You can have a healthy, vibrant community that continues to grow at that 0.8% that we've been doing for the last 20 years. We don't have to be a Bernie, we don't have to be a Fredericksburg, we don't have to be in Austin, and I think most of you here do not want any of those. No.
Oh, by the way, our employee ratio is about the same as Bernie. But I am actually a real estate developer, and I've built projects all over town. I've built projects in 5 different states, and she's right. We're going to continue to grow. We don't have to grow at the breakneck pace they think that's going to happen. My office park across from the Catholic Church playground, River Guide Village, I started that in 2002. And when I started it, I had every intention that it was going to take at least 10 years to fill up. Because Kerrville is not big enough to have sustained all the influx of office space that I was going to bring. Nobody gave me a tax break. I ponied up and put $1.1 million on the bar and bought the land and got started. And you're right, we don't need to beg anybody to come here. You know who my biggest competitor in town is? The city of Kerrville. That's right. I've lost more deals to the city of Kerrville than I've lost to anybody else. Do you know how hard it is to sell land when people are giving it away? You know, I'm glib, but I'm not that glib. I don't know. I don't think Harley could even sell somebody land if they're giving the stuff away. All right? He's got that golden radio voice. So the reality is we have got to get control over our development. And I have news for you. The 3 years during my lawsuit, all of my damages were incurred. We had a chief building official that was unlicensed. If you went to Sid Peterson and got operated on and nobody had a license, what would you do? Okay? That is a revolving door there at downtown. And the problem is they have the general opinion of developers, especially if you're local, that you're like the scourge of the earth while they go out and court these people from out of town. That's right. And then they call me, and the guys from out of town call and say, how in the world do you put up with these people? Do you know Wells Fargo told Ed Hamilton, their landlord, they will never build another Wells Fargo in town besides the one they have, just because of their experience with our development services.
Time. I think we've covered a lot of good topics, and I want y'all to have time after this is over to just be able to come up and ask any of your individual questions, because there are some issues that I'm sure each and every one of y'all have that you would like addressed. But I want to close, Brent, and we're gonna come down with one last question, and then we're gonna give y'all a minute to close. Okay, so these are the last two. The question is just, is there any issue we haven't talked about yet that you want to talk about, that you care about doing as a city councilman? 1 minute.
I'll tell you we have a political system, we have a political system masquerading as a judicial system in this town. We also have, where some people have pet mills, we have a probation mill. And I'll tell you, building this last building, just about everybody that worked for me was either on probation or parole. And it is utterly amazing what we do to these poor people. In fact, we have our own January 6th prisoner. we have got to get control of this place. Because if we don't, they're going to be locking all of us up. I'm actually surprised I hadn't been arrested. You know, with the lawsuit that I got going with the city, you know, we both filed our motions for summary judgment. Mine was 750 pages long, and the city's was 12. You know what their 12 pages said? We're the city, we can screw you. We're the city, we can screw you. We're the city, we can screw you. And these are all the court cases that tells us we can screw you. So, we got a lot of problems, all right? And we need to turn it over to the young people. You know, I have admired and been a Roman fan from day one, okay? Obviously, he didn't have a pacifier because he doesn't understand that rubber stamp thing, but I think he's going to be a great mayor.
Barbara, just what's one issue that we haven't talked about, if there's anything specifically that you care more about addressing?
You know, the ones we've talked about tonight, I want to thank you for bringing them up. I think they were excellent questions, and they were really the issues that are on my heart. And as you talk to people, you know, we've been to a lot of meet and greets and everything, and you can only cover so much in one evening. And so I focused on these things. It is water and growth. It's a two-sided coin, water and growth, taxes and spending, and then our personal freedoms. And that and underneath that personal freedoms comes protecting our children and respecting the rights of parents. So those really, you've touched on them. I think I've got my plate full. I think Kerrville has its plate full with these issues. So I'm going to leave it there.
Thank you.
Throughout this entire election, the three top issues that I've been hearing from all the citizens have been growth, our financial responsibility, and protecting our God-given and constitutional rights. We talked about the first two, so I want to speak on this last one real briefly. This ordinance that the City Council passed recently is really infringing on your First Amendment right to hand out political or religious literature on public property. Now, our First Amendment in the Constitution was carefully drafted by our founders. They wanted to make sure that they could put a limitation on government, to make sure government didn't interfere into our lives and our free speech. It wasn't a regulation on the citizens. What you see down at City Council, at City Hall, is a pattern of suppression of the voices of the citizens. It started with regulating us and electioneering at the polling place, the mayor cutting off people and stopping them from speaking, walking people outside of the City Hall from with our police chief, to this regulation. We have got to get this under control. This is our city, and I look forward to turning it back over to the hands of the people.
So Roman, why don't you just take one more minute to close us out about just anything else you want to share with people before we go home?
So we talked about a lot of issues. I look forward to answering probably any of the questions that you have. But what you're hearing a lot right now, and it's really unfortunate that we don't have Mr. Herring, Ms. Hughes, and Mr. McKinney here to speak about these issues. I think the representation that you have here with your candidates proves that we're willing to work hard for you, but that we are willing to go up to any group of people and speak to them. Your city council right now doesn't look like they represent everybody in the city. Your mayor and your next city council members have to be able to do that. The three of us up here are willing to speak to you. We're willing to go to any group and talk because we know we represent everybody. What you see, though, from our opponents and from their supporters is they can't even talk about the issues and the facts going on. The only thing that they have against us is to go at us personally with lies and misinformation. You deserve a mayor and you deserve city council members that are honest with you, transparent, who are willing to be held accountable, but most importantly, will always stand up for what's right, will stand on principle, and will put Kerrville first. Together, I am sure that we can make a difference in this community. We're gonna make history by electing the next youngest mayor of Kerrville. And truly, I am honored to continue serving you. I hope to have your vote. I'd be honored to have your vote come May 4th. and I look forward to continue serving you as your mayor. Thank you.
You know, 2 years ago, I married Bill Ferguson. He's a retired Border Patrol agent, served 32 years.
What a guy.
And Bill knows firsthand the threat our country is under. And that's a threat I know all of you know really well too. But it isn't just a threat on a national level. It's a threat that comes down right here. Every time your rights are infringed here, that is a threat to our future republic. And I've said in many of my meetings that as Kerrville goes, as our rural Texas towns go, so goes the state of Texas. And as the state of Texas go, so goes our nation. What we're doing here in this election locally makes a difference all across the nation. We need cities like Kerrville to stand up, get involved, go vote, get your neighbors there, because our republic is under threat. And I'm going to ask you all to please go to the polls, call your friends, and you keep calling them every day until they say, yes, 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 I went, okay? But go and get people to the polls, because it makes a difference. And we have to take a stand here locally if we're going to help our country nationally. And I want to thank you all, and I humbly ask for your vote on May 4th, and thank you for being here tonight.
Yes, I wanted your vote as well. We'll get that out of the way right up front. One other thing y'all could probably do, I'm sure a lot of y'all have noticed, there's this guy, the Kerr County liar, or calls himself the lead or whatever, okay? And he's been trying to massacre me in the press, and he's got all these judgments, and he's got all these liens, and he's got all this, he's got all that. In 2008, when I was building the condos next to Dieter, by the way, I offered to build Dieter at cost plus 1%, but they wouldn't agree to that for some reason at a $500,000 savings, but that's a whole other story that we'll have someday. But when I was building that, 2008 was a horrible time. And so in the construction business, if you have a bill and it gets more than 60 days old, they're wanting to file some kind of a lien to make sure that they got their rights reserved. Well, it took 92 days to get out of the city a permit that should have been issued in 5 days. So I've got all this stuff that I loaded up on, and well, guess what? These guys are going, well, Bates, when you go pay me? I said, well, when I go to work, and then I can actually charge the person, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I got all kinds of liens out there. I'm the one that filed them on their behalf. And they all got paid. There's only one person out there that I haven't paid yet. And so this guy comes out with this, I call him Comrade Amistoy, with all of this horse hockey. And unfortunately, I think some of you all are actually unwise enough to believe some of that. And I have never been interviewed by the guy for anything. I've never been interviewed by the Community Journal for anything. I've never been interviewed by the Daily Times for anything. They don't want to come talk to me. In case you haven't noticed, I can talk pretty good. And the last thing I want to do is get in a debate with me, because I can debate pretty good. But they can sit back with the keyboard, and they're kind of keyboard warriors. You all need to get the word out to people that I'm not the Antichrist by any stretch of the imagination. I might be Michael. I might be the one that's going to slay them all, but I'm not the Antichrist.
Thank you, Graham. You have to go back to your seats now. Thank y'all. Give everyone a round of applause. So I gave this little overview, and I'll just remind y'all, some of y'all were at the last forum we did, so I'm just going to remind you how to vote more than once legally. I went to Arizona last election cycle. That was like the state that everybody was waiting on for so long, right? So 2 days after the election in November, I've got a friend, he's like, I'm flying to Arizona, want to come with me? I'm like, what are we going to do? He's like, I don't know. It'd be better to be there than here. I mean, like, we already know. So 5 of us fly up there, we show up, Kerry Lake walks in, the Attorney General walked in, he lost by like 400 votes statewide. And they're like, what are y'all here to do? I'm like, I'm here to count some votes twice for y'all. And they're like, what? I'm like, I don't know. What's the game plan? We have no plan. You know, we talk about no plan. I was like, guys, I don't know. Do I wear a disguise? How do we get in there? We got to find these boxes somewhere. But we didn't find any. We lost, unfortunately, and I didn't count any votes twice. But I'm going to tell you how to legally vote more than once, okay? Very simple. You're going to vote early, okay? And you're going to vote early in early voting, right? So first day of early voting, second day of early voting, go vote. And when you vote, get that little picture of you and the little sticker saying I voted, and then you're going to email that to people in your church. You're going to post it on your social media accounts you have, send it out to your email list or whatever, and say, guys, I voted. There's an election going on. I have a list. Let me know if you would like it. So that is first step. First step is just voting, picture, post. I voted, I've done research, and you know what people are really going to want from you is all these propositions. We got all these propositions, and I'm a cheapskate. I don't want my city councilman to even be able to buy an HEB, to go order once a month, and so we need to, hammer them. So y'all can go hammer all these people, but the deal is you're going to go, I've got a list of all the propositions, and people are going to go, oh, send it to me. Okay, and where do I vote? And half of your friends are going to go, I'm telling you, this is not an insult to the populace, but it is. So you're going to say, I voted, and you're going to at least have one friend that goes, is this for president? I'm telling you, it happens. I mean, I get these. I post out and somebody goes, president? No, city council, you dummy. I got a list. And so you're going to send them the list, and they're going to go vote because of that, right? So during early voting is that window where people can go. You can say, here's the locations. Post on your social media. Now, if you want to take it one step further, you say, Luke, I don't want to vote only 5 times. I want to vote 20 times legally, okay? So 20 times legally means now you're going to make a list of people you know in Kerrville, and you're going to call them, and you're going to say, early voting's going on right now. It's going on now, or you're going to text them. If you don't want to call them, you're not the person who likes calling, you make the list, you just start texting. You can literally scroll through your phone number for a phone and go, he lives in Kerrville, he lives in Kerrville, he lives in Kerrville, and just what I will do is I will write a text. So you can write one text, and all you have to do is put their name. So you just click, send, John, comma, paste. Terry, comma, paste. And in I'm telling you guys, one afternoon, you're going to get 10, 15, 20 people to vote in the Kerrville city elections. And they're going to go, great, thank you so much for learning. I'll vote at some point, right? So that's my last piece of advice to y'all. If you like what you heard and you want to try to duplicate this room into a lot of other votes in the city elections, that's my last piece of advice. And the last thing I'll say is just, because Terry gets mad at me when I don't say something about what I do, but if you do once a week I do a show on Texas politics. The Luke Macia Show, you can watch it on YouTube, you can listen to it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you don't have to clap, it's not a big of a deal. I tell people we're the largest Texas politics podcast. It's like being the tallest midget in the room. It's not something you really brag about that often. We're not competing with Ben Shapiro or any of these people. We're talking about Texas politics for less than an hour, what you need to know. Watch it on YouTube, listen to it on Apple, do whatever. LukeMacias.com, you can put your email in, and I'll email you once a week just what the show's about. You can decide if you even care about it. You might read it and go, I don't even want to listen to that. Wait till the next week. And then 3 weeks you go, this guy's wasting my time, unsubscribe. You're good to go. So all that being said, God bless y'all. Thank you for what you're doing. I'm really proud of all the work you did in Kerr County to actually deliver conservative wins, and let's see if you can't do that for the city elections. God bless you.